record. Alrighty. I think the last time I also did a video setup. Again, we'll kind of put it on the bottom corner somewhere, and then we'll mix back and forth, or we'll cut back and forth. Apologize for the lack of wardrobe today, as well as the hair, but this is what we are working with today. And I decided to use my boom mic instead into the recorder to get a little bit better audio than before. I believe I was probably just using my wireless lav, the Rode Wireless Go. Not the best thing, but good enough for stuff like this. But today we're trying to make our production setup a little bit more high quality, and so if this works out pretty well, then we'll go ahead and keep this setup for future setups. And let me just D&D my phone. All right, so this breakdown is for the Brevet. They're good friends of mine. They've been on K-Rock. They have played for an Apple event in Cupertino. So you know they're pretty established. They're not like the Lumineers or something like that. But I guarantee you, coming up pretty soon, one day you will see them up there. All right, this is we did 3 music videos on this current day, and this is a throwback to 2018, right? So a lot has changed since 2018. My style, my knowledge, my experience has changed since then. The tools have changed, but I figured it'd be kind of cool to go back in time to see how I was doing things, and you can still see that the structure and the framework is there to what I do now, but obviously the tools would have been different, right? So we did 3 videos, acoustic covers of 3 of their more popular tracks, and we were shooting in an old house in a living room, right? So how do we go about the setup, right? How do we place 5 band members in such a way that it didn't look staged, right? Because usually when you're looking at a band playing, even if it's like an acoustic cover, most of the time they're set up in a traditional space, right, where you have like kind of the lead singer, and then you have a guitarist, and then you have the bassist, and then you have the drummer, and then maybe a piano guy, something like that, right? Kind of like in this V setup, right? We didn't want that, or they didn't want that. They wanted it to feel more organic, more like if you were walking into the room, you would just see them sitting around playing, right? And I decided that, well, the best way to do this, as far as coverage wise, is let's put you guys in sort of like a U shape. That way, it'll be easy for me I can just pan right, pan left to get to different band members. I can walk forward and walk back, and on the easy rig, so that way it'll be just the easiest way to get coverage, right? Camera wise, we were working with the Canon 1DX Mark II with the Tamron 45mm f1.8 VC. The vibration control helps out a lot to kind of just stabilize the camera or the lens and camera combination, along with the easy rig. We were shooting in 4K, and so the 1DX Mark II does crop in a little bit on the 4K. If I were to do this again, I probably would have went with a more wider lens, a 35mm. Just because sometimes with a 45 it gets a little bit too close, and you're not able to get a wider shot when you want a wider shot, right? So those are the logistics. Let's go ahead and hop into these the first shot. So the first shot, our opening shot, is with John. He is the guitarist, and we're in this huge living room area, right? Most of his of the lighting on him, right? We have 2 lamps. So we have 1 lamp here. Unfortunately, I didn't have any kind of like tungsten bulbs or dimmers. So I would have liked to have put a bulb here on a dimmer, just to be able to control the overall light, right? The overall exposure from his key or from his fill. And kind of the hard part with this is like, since we're shooting all around in this like U shape kind of motion here, I end up shooting him from this side, and I also end up shooting him from this side, right? So it's like kind of have to kind of pick your poison, so to speak, right? So he is being keyed and filled basically from 2 tungsten bulbs, lamps, one here, and then there's another one over over on this side, which you will see in a moment when we move to the lead singer. Got a nice little highlight pops here, nice edges around here, right? You can see from his jeans, and then from his face, right? So for the most part, we're looking for when we're shooting this way, this area, we're looking at pretty much an even exposure, right? With obviously some darkness coming in from, we're shooting at night, so darkness from the outside, but you have a lot of set decoration, right? This is just the house as it was, but a lot of set decoration and happening here, right? From like the mic stands to the amps to the doors to the curtains to the pillow, right? There's a lot happening here that's helping to make this scene look less mundane, so to speak, right? And then in the way back here, you can see here how there is a more cooler light coming in. That is, I had two lights over here, which we'll kind of see in a little bit, but I had an aperture 120D with just a reflector dish parked way back towards the kitchen, and that's giving us our room tone for the most part. Anything else about this shot? No, we didn't use any neg. I did use atmosphere in a can. And as you can kind of see, I didn't really do that good of a job because you can still see the haze just lingering here, right? So kind of overcooked the haze. But so that's one thing to know is you got to let the haze settle, right? And you're going to waft it with the floppy or whatever you have to kind of make it even so that's not floating around in space. All right, so our next shot, we move into our lead singer. Boom. This is the other lamp I was talking about, right? So this lamp is also providing key and the fill, depending on what side of the line we're shooting on. For John, right? You can see all this warmth coming in here, right? This warmth coming in onto the couch as well too. But a lot of the framework is still here, right? That we talk about a lot, which is going from light to dark to light to dark, right? So we move to our lead singer here, and again, his main backlight is from this other lamp. Again, wish we could have replaced the bulb, or I wish I had a bulb and a dimmer just to be able to control the levels a lot more, right? Have a nice little eye light here, and we're mostly shooting him this way. We are getting a front view, a non-profile view of him later on, which we will show. This cooler light coming in here, excuse me, it's coming from a Aperture Amran 672. It's a little bicolor LED panel. Not something you would want to use for a key light, but it's great for accent lights. It's great for like room tone. I think it's great for like an edge light. So that's what's giving him this cooler look here, right? But you can see that we're still creating some contrast, right? We have this light to darkness, right? We're letting it kind of just fade out. A lot of the lighting here is pretty harsh, not really soft light because I just didn't have enough to soften this huge space and also to light 5 different people in different locations of this room, right? So we're letting it just fall off here. And it's, again, we're kind of just going for a nice even look, right? But we still have contrast. We still have darkness coming out from the outside. We still have leading lines, right? Composition. We still have the contrast going from light to dark, and behind him is a window, which we'll see later on. So that's sort of what's also creating some more shape around our lead singer here. I think I was using black satin. You can see a little bloomage happening here underneath his chin, all right, which is always nice. Okay, and then we'll move on to the next shot. This is Julian. He's playing bass or some kind of instrument here. He is basically to the right of Eric, right? So if Eric's here, then Julian's to the right of him, if that makes any sense, right? And he's looking out towards the kitchen, okay? He's being filled just a tiny bit by the lamp that we had earlier here, right? Just a tiny bit you can kind of see, but this is our Aperture Amran 672, right? So the daylight. I had the softbox and the grid in front of it, so it is softening a little bit, but in order for me to get any kind of decent exposure, I needed to have it at a higher intensity, right? Which is why the light looks so harsh, even though it has the little softbox and the grid in front of it. It looks so harsh because you have to crank the light up so much. But again, composition-wise, pretty good, right? We're getting a leading line from this microphone stand here. It's being highlighted by little hints of a highlight from the tungsten lamp. Camera left, or behind camera, I should say. We're getting a highlight from the microphone from our aperture, and then we have some decent looking light, right? Not the best because again, it looks just really flat, really just blasting him front, right? from camera right. So not the greatest, but again, at least we're creating some shape. We have the textures from the walls. We have shadow depth of field, right, helping to direct the viewer's attention. And then we have, again, going from light to dark, right? So we have some layers that we're working with, and a pretty decent shot for what we're working with again. All right, now we're moving on. So next we're moving on to Greg. If you can imagine, Greg is sitting in front of Julian. So if Julian's here, in front of him is Julian playing the piano, or like an electric keyboard. I think that's. I'm pretty sure there's a newer word for it, but I'm just gonna call it an electric keyboard, right? How do we light this guy, right? Because our aperture Amaran, again, I don't have a lot of lights to begin with, right? Our aperture Amaran is really keying Julian. It's filling in a little bit of Eric, right? So what do we use for this guy then, right? What do we use for Greg? There was a piano here that it was just like a house piano, right? You probably find in many houses. On top of the house was two lamps here. They were tungsten lamps, horizontal lamps. You can think of like tube lamps, right? So I said, okay, well, let's turn these two on, just to add as a backlight, right? So we're not really a backlight, more of like an edge light for him. Okay, his main keys you can see here, because this is tungsten, right? This is a warmer light. It's edging him out ever so slightly in different points of his hair, right? But his main key, you can tell that it's a lot cooler, right? How it's more like white colored. That is from our that is from the Aperture 120D that is like parked way back, right? Parked way back in the kitchen, camera right, and that's what's giving him his main key. We're still able to create some layers here, right? As you can see, right, the 120D is hitting the walls here. And if you compare that to like here, right, you see how the light starts to fall off here. You can't really see it. It's just creating the room tone. Here you can see that the 120D is really lighting up everything, right? I mean, we're at 100% on a 120D. It's gonna be flooding a lot of the space, okay? But we're able to create some interest, right, from this, from our edge light here, that's acting as like sort of a backlight from these lamps here, creating some interest, right? You don't have a lot to work with. You want to create as much interest as possible, and how that happens is really just the location. It's a set decoration. It's how you can pepper in as many layers when you don't have the lighting to take care of it, right? So again, our tungsten lights are creating some little hints of a highlight from the microphone cover to the microphone holder itself, creating some interest here in his hair, because he has more like reddish orange hair. A little highlight pop here. Don't really like how this is coming in, which, you know, obviously if you can flag that off, or if you can diffuse that in some way. You want to be able to create interest, but not in a harsh way, if that makes any sense, right? And again, we're going from light to dark, right? So light to dark, and we're just letting the darkness fall off here, because that's all we can really do, right? Another angle of him, as you're walking closer, right? We're getting a nice little highlight here, very profile-y, but again, like his keyboard is in such a way where he can't turn this way to get both eyes for the most part. So again, just another angle of him, a nice little Rembrandt lighting that we have here. All right, so a lot of it is really just positioning, and hopefully you can get a nice composition depending on where things are happening. And again, this isn't rehearsed. This is pretty much like these guys are playing in real time, right? So you have to react to what they are doing, and where they're turning their eyes, where they're turning their head, where they're turning their body. All right. Next up, we move into the drummer, David. So behind here, you can see, right, really harsh backlight. That's our 120D. All right, that's our cooler light. That's our 5500 Kelvin light, or 6000 Kelvin light. Really just hitting David really hard, right? Because again, we need to carry this light all the way across to help key Greg, and then to help fill in the wall for Julian, right? We go back to David, cool. And then, right, those little tungsten lights that we had aren't hitting him because they're facing the other way, right? So what do, right? We have house lights in the back. This is the kitchen area here. We have the house lights. These are like fluorescent lights that are built into the ceiling, so they're just kind of pointing downwards and flooding the rest of the scene. And again, our 120D is just hitting David. We're working with silhouette, not really seeing his eyes, right? Which can't really do anything at this point, given the tools that we had. But at least we can, create interest, right? So we have backlight here, right? Falling off here. We have a little bit of edge here. We have the 120 and probably some of the house light ambient that's highlighting and hitting the microphone stand, right? A little bit of the microphone here, highlight hitting the wall here, right? So again, at least we're creating an interesting frame, an interesting image here. So move on. Next shot. Again, we're coming around the other side of the line to John, right? So we had that lamp here, which again is basically keying in. We have a really harsh backlight, which I could have controlled this because this is way blown out, right? But again, this is creating a nice little rim, a nice little edge on here. We have a haze that's helping to bring up the contrast, right? And again, we're kind of just allowing the contrast to come in. Now, didn't really do a good job of highlighting him because this is so bright, right? But I'm panning down because eventually you see the guitar and wanted to see his fingers play the guitar, right? I would say compositionally, if he was leaning forward a little bit, his head was leaning forward a little bit, then I would have covered that and would have allowed for a more pleasing backlight. So that would have been nice. If you swing profile here, you get more of his face and less of like a sidey profile. So that would have been an option too. But then the light kind of looks flat because then you're just you're sandwiching the light, kind of like here, right? Where you're kind of just sandwiching the light here. Here at least is more of a profile. But if you can imagine if I was dead on him, right? Then you're just sandwiching the light from here, right? So it's hard to create an interesting image, right? Release here, composition pretty good. It's a little blown out here, right? So these are things to note next time, right? For next time. Move on to Eric, right? So now we come back in front of Eric. We have that lamp that was over here. That's basically providing we're kind of sandwiching light here, right? Because we have a hot warm light here, and then we have that aperture Amran that's a little bit softer, but you can kind of tell, right? This little ping here, and this little ping here. It's a pretty harsh light, right? Not very flattering, but it's enough to light him up. Right, it's the window we were talking about behind. We have probably just street lights in the back. That's adding bokeh. Again, shallow depth of field, right? We're trying to create as much interest as possible using very limited resources. And then final shot, we come back around to Julian, right? This is more of a more pleasing shot, right? Compared to here. This is very interesting, but I would say this is a more pleasing shot because now you have the full emotion here, right? You have eyes, you have eye light, right? And you can see since he's looking this way, that aperture Amran is getting the eye light into both eyes, which is awesome, right? We have little hints of highlight here again, right? Creating interest. We have curtains in the back. We have the window here, right? Creating separation here. We have a little bit of highlight action coming here from camera left, from the lamp source. And again, a little bit of a harsh light, right? But what are you going to do? Because I would rather, the whole thing is I'm trying not to show the lights. If you're showing the practicals, different story, right? Practical, right? Practical. Whereas here, the hard part is not showing the lights, right? But again, we have a highlight. We have eye light here, catch light, always important for faces. I don't always do a good job of doing it, but when I do, good for me. All right, we have contrast, right? We have lighting and layers. We're going from light to dark. That's what we're trying to go for, right? And again, wish I could have had better fixtures, better lighting sources, because now everything is kind of lit. All right, everything is kind of the same exposure level, right? And our job as cinematographers is to do our best to create as much interest as possible in a scene and to direct the attention, right? Now, as the scene's playing out, it's easy to direct your attention because he's center framed and he has eye light, all right? But if you can imagine, if I can bring this level down here, bring the levels down here, bring the levels down here, still have the highlight pops here, highlight pops here, highlight pops here, highlight pops here, then that directs your focus right here, right? You know exactly where to look, all right? Cool, and that does it. Oh, looking here. that is it for this breakdown, friends. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We will be working on more breakdowns, commercials, short films, docs, things of that nature. Excuse me. To help benefit you guys, right? To help benefit myself too, because now this is a learning experience. Now we can take the things that didn't work in previous shoots and have a little journal, or have something on your phone, or have a online notebook, right, of some sorts, of some software. One I use is called Milanote, and I'm not being paid by them, but it's something that I use because it's very easy to use, very organized, and you can have multiple like cards, you can stack them, right? But there's things you can do so that way for the next time you know exactly how you can combat a new problem, or maybe it's an old problem that now you have the knowledge to say, okay, cool. Last time this happened, I have the fixtures, I have the manpower, I have the knowledge now to come up with a game plan. All right, cool. I will see you guys in the next video.